Pay attention to this footage from the security camera. Boulder, Colorado, 11:14 p.m. Sunday, October 22nd, 2021. A camera mounted at the front door of a quiet house near the University of Colorado Boulder campus captured exactly 22 seconds. You see Madison Cole, 24 years old, stepping onto the porch, smiling as Ethan Ward, 29 years old, opens the door. He drapes a thick robe over her shoulders, a familiar gesture, as if he had done it hundreds of times before. Madison reaches up and touches Ethan's cheek, a gentle, intimate touch. Ethan leans down, kisses her forehead, then they draw close, exchanging a few whispered words. The camera cannot record. Then Ethan takes Madison's hand and leads her inside. As the door nearly closes, Ethan turns his head and glances briefly out at the yard. His eyes are empty, inexplicably cold, and he has no idea that the camera just over 8 meters away is recording every movement he makes. That was the last time Madison ever appeared in this world. 6:12 a.m. the next morning, October 23rd, at Chautauqua Park, an early morning jogger stops when he smells something acrid. He follows the thin wisp of smoke rising from the base of a pine tree. Under the still smoldering ash, he sees a nearly burned tarp, and inside it, dismembered human body parts, severed limbs, an open torso, a missing head. He staggers back, hands shaking, then calls 911 in a panicked but trying to stay calm voice. The patrol team would arrive in a few minutes. Ethan Ward thought everything had been burned to nothing in the darkness of Boulder. He was wrong. The camera saw it all. Madison Cole, 24 years old, was studying nutrition at the University of Colorado Boulder. Madison chose this path after long months, caring for her ill mother, in Texas, a time that taught her healing lies, not only in medicine, but also in care and attention. 3 months after moving to Boulder, Madison quickly became the emotional anchor for her 3 roommates, the person everyone turned to for encouragement, a hot meal, or simply someone who would listen. But no one held a more special place in Madison's life than Ethan Ward. Ethan, 29 years old, entered Madison's life at the exact moment she was growing out of her teenage years. She was 14, he was 19, when they met through a community support program in Dallas. Madison was the girl with the orange backpack, a bit awkward, a bit shy, while Ethan was the young man carrying the gloom of someone raised in a violent household, always acting tough but inwardly struggling. Madison was the first to approach, handing Ethan a cookie and smiling. "You look like someone who needs to eat something to feel better." That simple sentence, a kindness with no expectation of return, stuck in Ethan's mind for a very long time. From that day, the bond between them began to form, quietly but strongly. Years later, when Ethan faced a financial crisis and was on the verge of losing his housing, Madison's family took him in. They lived together for 6 months, sharing dinners, watching basketball, getting through days when Ethan felt he had nothing left to hold on to. Madison was 19 then, Ethan 24, but between them was a familiarity rarely found among young people. And then very naturally, that friendship turned into something else, not loud, but obvious to anyone who looked. They were in love in their own way. Not the impulsive love of youth, but a slow burning, deep, subtle affection. Their love didn't begin with romantic confessions, but with caring for each other in the smallest things. Madison brought Ethan food when he worked, late shifts. Ethan fixed Madison's wobbly shelf in her new apartment. Madison made hot chocolate for Ethan on Boulder winter nights when the temperature dropped below 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Ethan held Madison on nights she couldn't sleep because she missed her mom. They didn't call each other boyfriend or girlfriend, but every action said it for them. Their mutual friends often teased, "How much longer are you two going to hide the dating thing from us?" Madison wouldn't answer, just smile. While Ethan looked at her with eyes, everyone understood she was his world. Madison loved the feeling of safety next to Ethan, and Ethan loved feeling needed. Both planned to get serious once Madison graduated. One summer evening in Colorado the previous year, while hiking on the Flatirons, Madison said softly, I think, later on I want to live here, with you. Ethan turned, gave one of his rare smiles and replied, I don't want to be anywhere else but next to you. It wasn't an official promise, but to Ethan, it was enough to become a lifelong commitment. When Madison moved to Boulder 3 months earlier, Ethan followed her here, partly to change, partly to stay close to her. They met 2-3 times a week, cooked together, watched movies, went running on weekends. Ethan didn't need many friends, he only needed Madison. And Madison still believed Ethan was the place she could always come home to. Madison loved Ethan in a soft, careful way. Ethan loved Madison in a deep, dependent way. But everything still stayed within the bounds of normal. To Madison, Ethan was the safest emotional home she had ever had. To Ethan, Madison wasn't just the woman he loved. She was the only person who had never left him, and no one, not even Madison, thought that love could become anything other than a peaceful future. There was only one thing Madison didn't know. To Ethan, love wasn't just a feeling. It was something he would never allow to be lost. For 10 years, Madison had been the only bright spot in his life. But it was that very light, not the darkness, that planted the seeds for the tragedy about to unfold. Moving into September 2021, Madison began to clearly feel that Ethan was relying on her more than she could give back. Her studies were intense, advanced nutrition courses, lab hours, plus her involvement in the fitness club, left her with less free time than before. One Sunday evening, September 12, 2021, after dinner at Madison's apartment, she said quietly, I think we both need a bit more space, not away from each other, just so I can focus on school. To Madison, that was an honest and gentle way to keep balance in the relationship. But to Ethan, those words felt like Madison was dismantling every brick they had built over nearly a decade. He heard space, but in his head it echoed, as she doesn't need me anymore. From that moment, a small crack appeared, at first just a thin line, but enough for uneasy light to pour in. On September 18th, Ethan overheard Madison talking to a roommate about moving to an apartment closer to campus to save commuting time. She wasn't hiding it, but hadn't told Ethan yet, because she wanted the right moment. However, when he heard Madison say, I need a healthier environment to focus on myself, Ethan's heart sank. He interpreted it the only way his fear allowed. Madison was trying to leave him. And fear, as it always had in Ethan's life, turned into a quiet possessiveness. On September 21st, another incident happened. Madison forgot to lock her laptop when she left her desk. Ethan saw the lit screen, and an email open. Madison discussing her November move plans with a friend, including the line, I also need to sort things out with Ethan, so neither of us gets too dependent. To Madison, it was a mature step. To Ethan, it was a breakup declaration. He read those words over and over, until they distorted, not too dependent became separate from me. Then end it, then finally, abandon. Madison noticed Ethan pulling away. She went to his house proactively and said, I think you should talk to a therapist. I love you, but I can't carry all your sadness for you. Ethan didn't respond. His eyes were sad, but also incomprehensible, as if Madison's words had built another wall, not opened a door for him. But the real conflict didn't start with emotions. It started with money. In August 2021, Ethan had secretly used Madison's personal information to take out a small loan to pay off his credit card debt. At first he believed he could handle it, and Madison would never know. But on October 2nd, Madison received a bank email. Your loan is pending processing. She froze when she saw her name. She called Ethan immediately, voice shaking. What did you do? Ethan begged. I just needed time. I'll pay it back. I didn't mean to hurt you. But to Madison this was no longer just between them. She was calm but firm. Ethan, if you don't stop this right now, I'll have to report it to the police. I can't let you use my name like that. Those words to Madison were a necessary boundary. To Ethan they were kindling. He felt cornered, losing Madison, losing freedom, his financial secret exposed, and the terror of being abandoned once more. On October 6th, In an unsent message, Ethan wrote, "If you leave me, I won't be able to live." But the terrifying part, he added, "or you won't be able to." 3 elements, possession, fear of loss, and panic over the exposed secret, began to merge. In Ethan's disordered mind, Madison was no longer the woman he loved, but a threat that could destroy his life. And then, on a cold late October night, Ethan reached the conclusion he believed was the only way to save himself. If Madison disappeared, all the problems would disappear with her. From that thought, a plan slowly took shape, at first just fleeting ideas, then quickly an unshakable obsession. On the night of October 14th, Ethan sat in front of his computer screen, hands trembling slightly, as he typed his first searches, alprazolam dosage, to cause unconsciousness, then how to tie someone without leaving marks, and later, as the darkest part of him took over, how to burn a body in the woods, without leaving ashes. His search history filled with horrifying keywords, each line a step away from the person Madison once knew. On October 15th, Ethan went to a sporting goods store and bought a bone-cutting knife, claiming it was for a camping trip. On October 16th, he stopped at Home Depot and purchased industrial zip ties, a large plastic bin, a dark green tarp, gasoline, rubber gloves, an industrial cleaner. To everyone else, these were ordinary items, but placed together, they formed an unmistakable picture. He stored everything in the basement, once just an old storage room, but now, in Ethan's mind, the fixation room. Ethan tracked Madison's schedule, meticulously. He noted when she left class, left the gym, stopped at the grocery store, and especially the Friday evenings, she came to his house. Her regular routine became the clock Ethan used to calculate. Part of Madison, the one he once loved, still lived inside him, but another part, growing from fear, desperation, and obsession, saw that schedule as opportunity. Madison had no idea that for those 2 weeks, Ethan watched her like a shadow. Ethan began preparing the basement. He spread the tarp on the floor, placed high-powered flashlights in the corners, readied ropes, the knife, gloves, cleaner. He turned off all the cameras in his house, under the excuse of fixing the network, so he would have an explanation if asked. What Ethan didn't know was that at the back of the house, on the porch of the opposite neighbor's home, a security camera, always pointed toward his back door. Less than 30 feet away, close enough to clearly capture every movement in the dark. Ethan added a black curtain over the basement door, to prevent any light from leaking out. He leisurely checked each item, each zip tie knot, each light position. Ethan wasn't rushed. On the contrary, he was eerily calm, as if preparing for surgery, rather than the most monstrous act of his life. To secure an alibi, Ethan scheduled a fake Uber ride, at 1 a.m. through the app, from his house to downtown Boulder. His plan was to create a timeline showing he left the house before it happened. He told himself, no one can prove anything, but he didn't know Uber only logs a ride if the passenger actually gets in, and the neighbor's camera clearly captured him dragging the heavy tarp around 3 a.m. Ethan looked at the completed basement and whispered, "Just do this one last time. Everything will be okay again." But the truth was the opposite. Every item he bought, every step he prepared, every movement around the house fell squarely in the sharp frame of a camera he never knew existed. On the night of October 22nd, 2021, the fateful day Madison Cole never knew would be her last, began like any other normal evening, 7:05 p.m. Madison texted Ethan, "I'll stop by bringing apple pie. You like this kind?" The message was light, familiar, giving her no premonition of what waited ahead. 8:12 p.m. The campus gym camera recorded Madison leaving the building, hair in a high ponytail, steps quick but relaxed. 9:03 p.m. Lilia. She stopped at a drink shop on Folsom Avenue, buying bubble tea for both. Ethan's favorite flavor, one she had chosen countless times over the years. 10:48 p.m. Ethan's doorbell rang. Madison stood there holding a still warm box of apple pie, smiling the smile Ethan once said, "Makes his whole week better." 11:14 p.m. The neighbor's camera captured Ethan opening the door, draping the robe over Madison's shoulders, kissing her forehead, pulling her close to his chest. 11:17 p.m. Ethan stepped out the back door with a large trash bag hidden behind his legs. The camera captured it unclear in detail, but enough to see the bag's shape and his unusually quick movements. Madison was sitting on the sofa at that moment, opening the lid of her bubble tea, the drink Ethan had already laced with alprazolam sedative hours earlier. 11:30 p.m. Madison took her first sip. The familiar sweetness made her suspect nothing. 11:52 p.m. Madison began to sway. She touched her forehead, sighing. "I'm a bit dizzy, probably from working out too much." Ethan approached, placed a hand on her back, whispering, "It's okay, let me help you." 12:04 a.m. Ethan supported Madison, now barely able to stand, down to the basement. The neighbor's camera didn't see that, but the sound of the back door opening was partially picked up by the microphone. 12:12 a.m. Madison came to slightly, trying to ask, "Where are you taking me?" But when she tried to move, she realized her hands were tightly bound with zip ties. Ethan leaned down, gagged her with a strip of cloth and said softly, "Don't fight, you won't have to worry anymore." Those words weren't reassurance, they were a sentence. From here on, the basement became the place where Madison ended. Ethan moved behind her, strangling her with force. Madison struggled desperately, kicking the tarp, knocking over the plastic bin, trying to find a way out. Ethan tightened his grip, but Madison fought back on pure survival instinct. In panic, Ethan grabbed the industrial cord he had prepared days earlier, looped it around Madison's neck and pulled hard. This time her body weakened, her feet kicked the floor one last time, then went still. Silence fell over the basement like a cold blanket, but Ethan's most depraved act was still to come. He pulled out the tarp, placed Madison's body on it, then used the bone-cutting knife, the tool he bought for camping, to dismember her. Each cut was made with a precision, not of someone confused, but of someone who had planned. When he opened Madison's chest cavity, Ethan paused for a few seconds, breathing heavily, then reached in and removed her heart. An utterly inhuman act, with no justification that could lessen its cruelty. Afterward, he rinsed the body parts with cold water to reduce fingerprints, wiped the tarp surfaces clean, and arranged them methodically before rolling it up. 2:41 a.m. The neighbor's camera clearly recorded Ethan opening the back door, dragging a large, heavy tarp across the yard. Streetlight caught the tarp, revealing the shape inside with every movement. Ethan struggled to lift it into the trunk, taking nearly 30 seconds, completely unaware it was all being recorded. 3:10 a.m. He drove to Chautauqua Park, from 3:24 to 3:51 a.m. He poured gasoline on the tarp, set it ablaze, then used an iron bar to stir the embers in a desperate attempt to destroy all evidence. The smell of burning flesh, plastic and fabric mingled, rising into the cold night forest. 4:06 a.m. Ethan returned home, showered thoroughly, scrubbed his skin until it was red, then burned all his clothes in a metal drum behind the house. 4:45 a.m. In a move he thought was clever, Ethan texted their group chat, "Has Madison gotten home safely? She seemed a bit tired tonight." The message was sent from the same house where he had killed her less than 5 hours earlier. A brazenness only possible in someone who believed he had erased every trace. But Ethan didn't know that every step he took, dragging the tarp across the yard, every time he opened the back door, every second he thought he was acting in darkness, was captured perfectly by the neighbor's camera. And that very camera would shatter his supposedly perfect plan. On the morning of October 23, 2021, at 9:18 a.m., Madison's roommate called Boulder police to report that Madison had not returned home after visiting Ethan Ward the previous evening. She had never stayed out overnight without notice, never gone hours without responding, and hadn't shown up to class that morning. By 10 a.m., police officially opened a missing person case. They contacted classmates, places Madison had been the night before, but no one had clear information beyond her last text. "I'll stop by Ethan's." When the partially burned body was discovered at Chautauqua Park at 6:12 a.m., what the investigators could not yet confirm identity, but scorched yellow fabric scraps and a few remaining hairs at the tarp's edge were immediately sent to the lab. By 4 p.m. on October 23rd, DNA from the hair matched Madison Cole at 99.98%. The remains showed anatomically precise cuts, not impulsive but premeditated. Police immediately expanded the investigation, reviewing security cameras around Ethan's neighborhood, and that's when the neighbor's camera footage became the golden evidence. 11 hours 14 minutes and 8 seconds p.m. The previous night, Madison enters Ethan's house, 2:41 a.m. Ethan drags a large heavy tarp across the backyard, struggling to load it into the trunk. No footage shows Madison leaving the house. That moment shifted the entire investigation. Police contacted Ethan that afternoon of October 23rd. Ethan appeared worried and said Madison left his house around midnight because she felt tired. But phone data told a different story. Madison's last location ping was 11:29 p.m., right after her phone connected to Ethan's home Wi-Fi. After that, the phone went completely silent. GPS data from Ethan's Mitsubishi Outlander showed the vehicle left the house at 2:57 a.m., stopped at the exact coordinates of Chautauqua Park at 3:10 a.m., idled for 27 minutes before leaving. The times matched perfectly with when the jogger discovered the still smoldering ashes. On October 24th, police obtained a search warrant. In the basement, they found small blood traces near the baseboard, nearly invisible to the naked eye, but reacting strongly under luminol. The bone-cutting knife in the toolbox contained DNA matching Madison. On Ethan's laptop, search history from October 14th to 22 revealed dozens of chilling keywords: how to dismember a body without leaving traces, dosage for fast unconsciousness, how long to burn a body until bones deform, how to remove fingerprints. The list turned investigators from suspicion to certainty. This was not an accident, not impulsive. It was a meticulously calculated murder plot. That afternoon, Ethan was brought to the station. The interrogation lasted over 6 hours, patient, slow, striking directly at psychological contradictions. Ethan initially repeated that Madison left at midnight, but then the investigator placed the first camera image in front of him, Madison entering the house. The second image, the large tarp being dragged across the backyard. He looked away at the wall. The third image, his car's headlights turning on at 2:57 a.m. The fourth image, his license plate at the Chautauqua Park entrance at 3:10 a.m. Ethan's hands began to shake. The investigator spoke slowly, word by word. "If she left your house, then where did she go? Because the camera never saw her walk out." Ethan stayed silent. That silence stretched nearly 2 minutes, long enough to hear every strained breath. Then his voice was barely a whisper. "I don't remember." But the evidence remembered, and the evidence spoke for Madison. On March 12, 2022, Ethan Ward's trial took place at Boulder County Court. Madison's family sat in the front row, holding hands, trembling, as the prosecutor played the final 22 seconds of CCTV footage of Madison alive. The scene of Madison leaning her head against Ethan, him kissing her forehead, her stepping into the house she would never leave. Many in the courtroom cried at the sight. Ethan did not look at the screen. He stared only at the floor. The verdict was read at 3:46 p.m. Life imprisonment without parole. Some said they felt relief, but Madison's family did not. For them, justice would never be enough, because what they wanted, the girl walking safely out of that house, had never come true. The day Ethan Ward was sentenced closed one part of the case, but opened a wound so deep nothing could heal it for Madison's family. When the 22-second CCTV clip was played in court, the scene of Madison smiling, leaning her head against Ethan, him draping the robe over her shoulders, her stepping into the house she believed was the safest place. Madison's mother stood up abruptly, let out a choked sob, and collapsed in the front row. Medical staff rushed over, but no one could soothe the pain of a mother watching the last moment. Her daughter was alive, and still trusted the man who killed her. Madison's father stared at Ethan without a word, but his eyes held a decade of love Madison and Ethan once shared, now crushed without mercy. Madison's friends couldn't believe what they were seeing. One close friend whispered, "Madison always believed Ethan would never hurt her." Those words hung in the air like an indictment of everyone's naivety. Those who had seen their love, their care, their special closeness, and never imagined it would kill her. After the trial, their mutual friends held a small memorial at the Flatirons, where Madison once said she wanted to live with Ethan someday. They brought flowers, candles, and old photos. No one could understand how a love so deep, lasting nearly a decade, could turn into something vicious enough to take the life of the very person he once swore to protect. But what Ethan did was not impulsive. It was the deadly combination of dependency, despair, control, and fear of abandonment. The emotional cocktail not everyone recognizes until it explodes. And in the heavy silence that hung over Boulder for weeks afterward, a harsh lesson emerged clearly. Cameras cannot prevent crime from happening, but they can speak for the dead. They record what victims never had time to tell. They shatter the lies murderers think will hide everything, and they are the only thing that stood on Madison's side when she could no longer defend herself. The second lesson was even more bitter. The killer is sometimes not a stranger, not the darkness or an unknown predator. Sometimes, it is the person who sat beside you for 10 years, the person you believed was home, the person you gave love, trust, forgiveness, and hope to. Sometimes, it is the person you said "I trust you" to, and also the last person you ever saw in life. A memorial plaque for Madison was placed at Chautauqua Park a few months later, where her ashes had once been scattered so brutally. People often leave yellow flowers, Madison's favorite color, and every year on October 22nd, her family returns to that spot, looking up at the mountains, remembering a girl who was turned into a victim by the very person she loved. No sentence can ever balance the loss. All that remains is the cold truth this case left for everyone. The camera only recorded 22 seconds, but those 22 seconds were enough to stand with Madison, and against the man who thought he would get away. Thank you for following the story to the end. If you want to hear more shocking cases like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next episodes, where the truth always finds a way to speak for itself.